I find myself in a whirlwind of emotions. Unsure if I'm the one at fault or if circumstances simply drove me to react in a way that I now regret. My story began a few months ago when I met a guy who seemed like a dream come true. From the moment we met, there was an undeniable chemistry between us. He was charming, attentive, and made me feel like I was the only person in the world. It was exhilarating and, for a while, everything felt perfect. As time went on, our relationship deepened. We spent weekends together, shared intimate conversations, and built a connection that felt genuine. But then, everything came crashing down. I was blindsided when I discovered that the guy the first was seeing was actually married. The revelation hit me like a ton of bricks. I felt completely deceived, and it was like the ground had been pulled out from under me. I immediately ended things with him, my mind racing with anger and confusion. I couldn't believe how well he had hidden his marital status. I was hurt and felt utterly foolish for not seeing the signs earlier. Despite my attempts to move on, he continued to reach out, trying to rekindle our relationship. I blocked him on all platforms. But he persisted, his behavior only adding to my distress. The situation escalated when his wife found out. Her reaction was explosive and, understandably, filled with hurt and betrayal. However, instead of channeling her anger towards him, the person who had been unfaithful, she directed it towards me. I became the target of her wrath. And her response was far from fair. She took to social media, launching a campaign of lies and public shaming against me. She labeled me as a homewrecker. Despite my clear innocence in the matter, the vitriol spilled over, and I started receiving nasty messages from her supporters. It was a brutal experience. And I felt trapped in a nightmare of her making. The most painful part was that, after all the chaos, she ended up taking him back. To me, it seemed like a slap in the face. I had cut ties with him, wanting nothing more to do with someone who could deceive me so thoroughly. Yet, it felt like both of them were determined to make my life as miserable as possible. I wanted to move on and heal, but their actions kept dragging me back into their drama. The situation reached a new level of complexity last night. I went out for dinner with a few friends, hoping for a simple, relaxing evening. The restaurant was lively, and my friends and I were enjoying ourselves, trying to put the past behind us. But then, she walked in. I spotted her across the room, and my heart sank. I knew from the moment she saw me that trouble was brewing. She stormed over to our table with a fury that was almost palpable. Her face was flushed, and her eyes were filled with tears of rage. Without hesitation, she began berating me in front of everyone. She accused me of ruining her marriage and called me a terrible person. The same things she had been posting online. The public scene was excruciating. I tried to maintain my composure, but her relentless assault made it nearly impossible. As the verbal attack continued, I felt a surge of frustration and exhaustion. I had already been through so much, and being used as her emotional punching bag had worn me down. In a moment of sheer exasperation, I snapped. I said something that I deeply regret. Maybe if you could satisfy your husband, he wouldn't have had to come running to me. The words were out before I could stop them. Harsh and cutting. Her reaction was immediate and dramatic. She burst into tears and fled the restaurant, leaving a stunned silence in her wake. The aftermath of my outburst was a mix of confusion and guilt. I knew the comment I made was cruel, and it gnawed at me that I had resorted to such a personal attack. My friends' reactions were divided. Some felt that she deserved what she got after everything she had put me through, while others believed I should have taken a different approach, one that involved ignoring her and not engaging in conflict. The situation is further complicated by the fact that I had repeatedly tried to explain to her that I had no idea he was married. I had made it clear from the beginning that I was also a victim of his deceit. Despite my efforts to make her understand, she chose to believe his version of events over mine. Her refusal to accept the truth only fueled my frustration and feelings of helplessness. As I reflect on what happened, I grapple with the question of whether I am the asshole for snapping at her. I understand that she was hurt and that her reaction was driven by profound emotional pain. However, I also feel that the relentless bullying and false accusations I endured contributed to my breakdown. My intention was never to add to her suffering but to defend myself from the unjust blame and public humiliation. In the end, the situation leaves me questioning my own actions and the impact they had. Was I justified in my response? Or did I cross a line that I should have avoided? The complexity of human emotions and the messy aftermath of such encounters make it difficult to determine where I stand.
I'm a 32-year-old woman who recently ended a 5-year relationship with Jason. A man I once envisioned spending my life with. We had been planning our future together, marriage, children, and financial stability. Our lives seemed so intertwined that it felt like a future we were both invested in. Until it unraveled in a way I never anticipated. The collapse of our relationship began in the summer of 2023. Jason's mother had been diagnosed with cancer. And the prognosis was grim. As her condition worsened, he made the decision to return to his hometown to be with her and support his family. This was undoubtedly a difficult time for him. And I empathized with the immense strain he was under. Still, the sudden shift in our relationship was a jolt I wasn't prepared for. Despite my own heartache, I offered to help in any way I could, suggesting that I could maintain our apartment, visit him, and keep everything running smoothly while he focused on his family. In the wake of our breakup, I was left feeling isolated. The reality of my situation set in when I realized I had no one to turn to for comfort besides my parents. Friends seemed to brush off my pain with remarks like, "Well, his mom is dying," as if that somehow invalidated my own grief. My emotional turmoil was overshadowed by his family crisis. And I was left to navigate my sorrow alone. It was a tough period. And though I eventually moved on with my life, changing apartments and starting to date again, the scars of that time lingered. Then, about a week ago, Jason reached out. His mother had passed away months earlier, and he wanted to reconnect. We exchanged condolences, and he proposed the idea of rekindling our relationship. He suggested starting over, but I was resolute in my decision to move forward without him. His offer was a painful reminder of the unresolved issues between us. When he asked for a reason, I explained that my feelings had changed and I had moved on. This response seemed to shock him, and he referenced my earlier offer to keep the home open for him during his crisis. I felt a pang of frustration and disappointment. The support I offered back then was out of love and commitment. But his actions had made it clear that our relationship was not a priority for him. Jason's mention of a mutual friend who claimed I was still single only added to the discomfort. In a moment of defensiveness, I told him, "I'm not single for your benefit," before ending the call. The harshness of my words reflected my frustration with how he and his wife had handled the situation. I had been subjected to public shaming and false accusations, all while trying to cope with the emotional fallout of being left during a family crisis. I felt like I was being used as a scapegoat for their troubles. And I was tired of being the target of their anger and disappointment. In the days following the call, I began to reflect on the reactions from our mutual friends. Some were sympathetic, while others were critical of my response to Jason's outreach. They suggested I should have been more understanding and declined his proposal more gracefully. Their criticism stung, especially since they had been absent when I needed support the most. It was clear that my friends were not entirely on my side, and their judgments only compounded my feelings of isolation. Jason's actions, coupled with the reactions of those around me, left me feeling betrayed and unsupported. I had done my best to be there for him during his crisis. But when the tables turned, I found myself alone. My frustration with Jason's behavior and the lack of empathy from my social circle drove me to a point where I decided to sever ties with both. I blocked Jason and all our mutual friends, including those who had been kind but failed to show solidarity when I needed it most. It was a painful but necessary decision to protect my own well-being and maintain my boundaries. In the aftermath of these events, I've decided to focus on rebuilding my life. I plan to use friend-finding apps to connect with new people who can offer genuine support and understanding. My past relationships have shown me that true friends are those who stand by you through thick and thin. Not just when it's convenient or comfortable. Moving forward, I intend to cultivate relationships with people who respect my boundaries and offer unconditional support. Reflecting on this tumultuous period, I realize that the journey of self-healing and finding new connections will be challenging but necessary. The support I received from strangers online was unexpectedly comforting, offering me validation and empathy when those I once relied on fell short. I'm grateful for their kindness and am committed to surrounding myself with individuals who genuinely care. Ultimately, this experience has taught me valuable lessons about trust, boundaries, and the importance of standing up for oneself in the face of adversity. While the past few months have been incredibly difficult, I am hopeful for the future and determined to create a life where I am valued and respected.
The past few weeks have been a whirlwind of emotions, family dynamics, and a significant clash of perspectives. My name is Daniel, and I'm 28 years old, married to my amazing wife, Mia, who is also 28. We've been together for 5 years, and our relationship is full of love, laughter, and, admittedly, a fair amount of public displays of affection. It's something that defines us and keeps our connection strong. Our lives took an unexpected turn recently when my younger sister, Sophie, 23, came to stay with us. Sophie had been having a tough time and needed a place to stay while she figured things out. Mia and I were more than happy to help her out, offering her a room and a supportive environment. We've always been close, and the idea of having Sophie stay with us seemed like a good way to support her through a rough patch. Little did I know that this act of kindness would soon stir up a storm. Our home was buzzing with the usual activity, Sophie working at the dining table while Mia prepared dinner in the kitchen. It was an ordinary evening, with the aroma of Mia's cooking wafting through the house. I was walking through the kitchen, passing by Mia, when I decided to playfully slap her on the butt. It was a gesture of affection that we had shared countless times before. A small expression of our closeness that we often indulged in, even in the presence of others. At that moment, it felt natural and lighthearted. Mia laughed it off, as she always did, and continued with her cooking. However, the atmosphere in the room shifted when Sophie's reaction became apparent. She was visibly uncomfortable and disturbed by what she had witnessed. Her disapproval was palpable, and it didn't take long for her to voice her feelings. Later that evening, as the kitchen had quieted down and we were all settling in for the night, Sophie approached me with a serious expression on her face. She told me that she found the slap disrespectful and gross. Her words were sharp and her tone was laden with disapproval. I was taken aback by her reaction. To me, the gesture was a simple, affectionate act between my wife and me, something that didn't seem out of place in the privacy of our home. I tried to explain to Sophie that Mia and I have a dynamic that includes these playful, affectionate gestures. I told her that Mia actually enjoys it and that it was part of our relationship's playful nature. I was frustrated by the fact that Sophie seemed to take offense, particularly when we were doing her a favor by allowing her to stay with us during her time of need. It felt like she was imposing her own standards on our relationship and disrespecting the boundaries we had set. Sophie's reaction to my response was even more intense. She argued that she had every right to feel the way she did and that it wasn't just about Mia and me, it was about the respect she felt was lacking. Her comments were not just directed at the specific incident but seemed to extend to a broader critique of how we expressed our affection. The conflict didn't end there. The situation left me feeling upset and confused. I couldn't understand why something so innocent and benign in our eyes had become a source of tension. Mia was also caught in the middle, trying to navigate the discomfort in our home caused by Sophie's reaction. The atmosphere became strained, and the simple act of affection that was meant to be a sign of our love now felt like a breach of some unwritten family code. Days went by, and the tension didn't dissipate. The incident was a constant undercurrent in our interactions, creating an awkward dynamic in our home. I began to reflect on the situation more deeply, trying to understand if there was any validity to Sophie's perspective or if it was purely a clash of personal boundaries. It became clear that there were differing expectations and boundaries between us and Sophie. While Mia and I were accustomed to a certain level of physical affection, Sophie had different comfort levels. Her reaction was a reflection of her own boundaries and values, which seemed to clash with ours. The challenge lay in reconciling these differences without letting them drive a wedge between us. As I continued to process the situation, I realized that the issue was not just about the specific incident but about how we navigate differing personal boundaries within our relationships. It was a reminder that our personal expressions of affection might not always align with others' comfort levels, even within our own families. In the end, I had to accept that while Sophie's reaction might have seemed extreme to me, it was a legitimate expression of her own discomfort. It highlighted the importance of open communication and mutual respect in navigating personal boundaries. Mia and I had to find a balance between maintaining our relationship's affectionate nature and being sensitive to the comfort levels of those around us, especially when they were living under our roof. The experience also underscored the need for understanding and empathy in family relationships. While the slap on the butt was a small, playful gesture to us, it had larger implications in the context of our family dynamics. It was a lesson in the complexity of interpersonal relationships and the importance of finding common ground while respecting individual boundaries. As Sophie eventually settled into her new routine and the initial tension began to ease, Mia and I took the opportunity to reflect on our approach to affection and how it intersected with the comfort levels of those around us. It was a challenging period, but one that ultimately brought to light important lessons about communication, respect, and the nuances of family dynamics. In the end, the incident became a turning point in how we navigated our relationships and set boundaries. It reinforced the idea that while we cannot always control how others perceive our actions, we can strive to approach each situation with empathy and understanding. The experience was a reminder that family dynamics are complex, and finding a balance between personal expression and respect for others' boundaries is an ongoing journey.